Through the Mayhem, the Silently podcast series, bringing marketing industry leaders together to discuss the ever-shifting media landscape. Learn about the ins and outs of real-time marketing, influencers, data privacy, technology, and so much more. All from industry experts with real experience, giving you the real answers. Now, let's break through the mayhem.
Welcome back to Breaking Through the Mayhem for episode 64. Super cool. We have our friend and a legend, Marybeth. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
You know, we figured out that we crossed paths at work along the way, which is super cool.
Yeah.
And look at where we both are now. It's so cool. I mean, I was checking out your background.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Thank
Really cool. Really,
Yeah,
really cool. Like,
fun times.
I think what's amazing about your background, I would love you to talk a little bit about it. First off, let everyone know kind of who you are, your title. But like, I think what's so cool about you, which is why I'm so excited for this episode, is that not only have you risen in an organization and led people, but you've pretty much played every position on the field,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I think that's so super valuable while you kind of lead. So tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you work. I know you're at Index Exchange. It's so cool. Everyone should know
Sure.
who it is, but tell me a
Yeah.
little bit about Mary Beth.
Sure. Well, thank you first of all for having me. I'm excited to be here. I grew up in the Midwest, which I feel like is always people always think I'm from Connecticut, and I'm trying to decipher what that means about me. But I grew up in Kansas City. I've been in New York for 20 years, and I wanted to be a lawyer when I grew up. And so I went and paralegaled for a year at a law firm in downtown New York after college and was like, this is the worst experience of my entire life. No joke. And I was like at a party or, basically like hanging out with people and they're like, you should go to tech. And I was like, okay. Long story short, I ran into Kelly McConnell. That's a fun story for another day. And got into Adtech and started at PubMatic and been in Adtech ever since. So right now I'm the chief commercial officer at Index Exchange. So I oversee basically all of our customer success, our services business, some of our operations teams, our support teams, and kind of our data vendor ecosystem, marketplaces, et cetera. And then prior to that, I spent 10 years at the trade desk on the agency and brands team, leading the entire client services team on that. So that's kind of
Wow,
my background and where I came from.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
You
Oh,
achieved.
and to answer your question, I came up kind of a very linear path. So I started as an account manager at the trade desk and just slowly worked my way up. And I think what really blew my mind as I went through kind of each level and learned so much was how much you don't know. And I hate to say like fake it till you make it because like that's like a really, like I don't love how that sounds, but in some ways, what I quickly realized is like when you're a junior, you feel like everyone knows everything, and they're kind of like you're like, oh, this is so planned, this is so clear, and as you get more senior, what you quickly realize is like we're all just doing the best we can every day. And we're making decisions fast, and it's imperfect, but we're trying. And you're trying to make it as smooth for the people below you as humanly possible. And so I feel like a big part of kind of what I realized as I played every role is like there's so much uncertainty. So just like literally like get all the facts on the page, learn as much as you can, and then try as much as you can to make it better for both the people below you and for the next person. Like document everything, make everything as easy as possible. And I think I've tried really hard to do that and to coach that as I've coached different people coming up through the organization. And that's really seemed to help kind of make people realize that like there's no secret answer that like you make senior director and suddenly this comes into play. It's like no, we're all coming into these roles, especially in ad tech where everything's changing every year and a half, 2 years. Like we're coming into all of this with so much uncertainty and so much scatter everywhere, and so it's really making sense of all and then trying to make it as smooth as possible for those around you.
I love that. Basically what you basically just told me is you're humble, you're always learning, and you're always thinking about how to help the person coming up do what you've been able to do before,
That's
right?
flexible. Yeah.
Right? So ultimately when I hear that, I start to say to myself, who helps you then?
Yeah.
Right? Now that you're doing all this coaching. And the second thing that I think about a lot is like, how do you keep yourself out of playing now when you're also
Mm,
coaching, right? I find that to be the hardest balance when
that's the
I
hardest balance.
talk to people. So those would be my opening thoughts that I'm thinking
I
here.
love those questions, like, hit at my true heart here. So I'll start with the second one first, which is I say this at least once a day to somebody that reports to me, which is, like, it's so hard to find the balance of what do you own? What does your team own? Where do you almost player 'cause I believe, like, deeply that we're all player coaches. That's, like, a huge part of my leadership philosophy. I think I have worked for people that did not take a player coach mentality, and it was really hard because I would go in with, like, I'd go to a one-on-one and be like, "I have this huge problem with," you know, I'll pick on Samsung's measurement solution, blah, isn't blah, 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 blah. And they would just stare at me blankly and they would just be like, well, I guess you can ask engineering. And I'd be like, "Oh, okay." And so I quickly realized as a leader myself, I never wanted to be the kind of leader or manager where I couldn't, at the very least, brainstorm with people around me, like what we could do to solve it. And part of the brainstorm might be we should talk to engineering and we should talk to them about what they think about this or that. That might be part of it. But to have like a complete like a complete inability to understand what I'm even saying, it, it was like such a struggle for me. And so I believe we should all be player coaches, but in that, what's the balance? And for me, it looks mostly like probably right now 25%, I would say player, which on my career has gone up and down all the time. I mean, my lowest point was probably when I was running a very large team at the trade desk. I was probably like 8% player at a point in my career, which was really hard for me because I love sitting with clients and like talking through what they need. Is Sightly the right thing? What's Sightly going to bring to the table? How does that play with the SSP? How does that play with the DS? Like, I love that stuff. Like, I get so excited. And so for me to be 8% of my time in the room with clients was like so tough. But the team needed me in more of an operational capacity, and that was what was needed. But now I'm probably at a 20-25% place, and that feels really good for me. So I have a really good amount of time that I spend out in the market with clients, thinking about what's next, spending time with our CEO, Andrew, and I really enjoy that piece. And then the rest is really thinking about the rest of the team. And so I'm constantly asking my directs, where are you in that spectrum? Where do you think you should be? And where do you think you add the most value? Because I think it changes throughout both every role and even within the year that can change up and down. When we were going through a lot of our AI implementations to think about how do we want to use AI very smartly internally, that was a time where I was probably spending more time internal than I normally would because I was like, I want to get this done. And then once it's done, it's like, okay, I can kind of pull back on that. So it's something I'm talking about all the time. And the second piece is to your question is where do I kind of get all of this? I love mentorship and coaching. So I am a huge executive coach person, to the point where my friends are like, "If you recommend a coach, I'm gonna kill you." And I'm like, I know, but it's so helpful because I think having that outside perspective and someone to come in and hear all the pieces and be like, "Okay, here's what I'm seeing, here's what I'm hearing," and help you brainstorm and reimagine. Is this role right? Or could you think about it this way? Or is it better if we did this? Both on the tactical and in kind of your own life and the big picture. That's been invaluable for me, especially when I was at the trade desk and we were scaling so fast that like my manager was amazing. He was an amazing human. He did not have time to sit down with me and be like, "Let's talk about Marybeth's dreams." That was just not on the agenda. And I get that. I mean, he had a lot on his plate, but I think for me to find people that could do that for me allowed me to really grow and really invest. And I will say, like, a lot of it was my personal money too. When the trade desk didn't have the funds for things like that, I would just go and be like, listen, I think it's worth the money to invest in my own career and get this perspective. And I think it will pay me dividends in the future. And then from a mentorship perspective, I'm so lucky. I've had so many amazing, both women and men who throughout my career in ad tech have sat me down and been like, I love what you're doing here. I think you could do this. I love what you're doing there. Also say like, I think you missed the mark here. I was a imagine this. I was a very intense IC who wanted to control everything when I first became a leader,
No way.
manager. Man, I know, no way, right? And I remember had my manager sat me down and he was just like, "So," he was like, "You're doing great, but, like, you're not using your team. You're not delegating at all. You've gotta shift or you're never gonna get out of this IC mode, and you're not gonna be able to scale." And so I think having those relationships with people in that mentorship capacity to help redirect you in different ways, both positively and negatively, is just I've been very lucky, and I also think I've always been very open and receptive to feedback. So, like, instead of, even if you're internally freaking out, to be able to be like, "That's super interesting, tell me more," it makes it m more open for them to then come back to that and be like, "I know she's now open and receptive to feedback. I feel more comfortable sharing with her." That creates kind of almost like a circle of trust. I think that's true with clients as well, as an aside, but it creates almost like a circle of trust, and then I think they're more willing to invest in you when some of your peers may get feedback and be like, "That's not true. I delegated 5 times last week." And then it's like, "Okay, this is a waste of my time." Like, they're clearly not ready to take on any feedback right now.
I love that. And, obviously you're now joining this show, and what makes you wanna be out there? What makes you wanna tell your stories?
I think there is this, perception, especially as, like, a working mom, that if you have to really not be yourself in order to, like, get to very senior roles, and I can honestly say in a very great way, like, I've been able to lead teams and to do the things I wanna do, while truly, I think, being kind of who I am, bringing what I think I bring to the table, and doing it in a really honest and authentic way, and my one of my big leadership, for lack of a better kind of sayings, which I stole from an amazing book called Scaling People, so credit where credit is due, but "Say what you think you cannot say" is, like, one of my big mantras, and so I think there's this perception that basically, like, you have to almost, like, try to be a man and shine it on and pretend like nothing else is happening, and I think I've tried to really bring together and bring out kind of more of an aspect of, like, be who you are and say what you think you cannot say, and just do what's right or what you think is right in the moment, and I think it will work out for you. I don't think you have to constantly try to assert that assert some sort of persona, and that's the only way that success can really work.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think you're hitting on one side of how I'm thinking about it for you, but I'm thinking the other side.
What's the other side?
I don't think any of that's not the reason you even have to tell your story, right? You did it no matter what.
Sure. Like, you mean internal drive and kind of motivation?
Yeah, you would
Yeah,
have done it no matter what.
of course.
So I think ultimately one of the things I hear when you speak is that you're gonna find the end zone. Like, that's what it sounds like to me. And I think if you start to tell it that way, it's even better because the truth is, like, I agree with you. I have 2 kids, 5 and 2.
Aw, good
Uh,
ages.
it's hard.
Mine are 4 and 1, so
It's
we're
hard.
right there with you.
It's hard. Last night, my son was up till 3:30 in the morning, right? And I was with him. And but ultimately, I don't think it's, a thing of, like, wearing a different feeling or whatever. I think ultimately, I hear, like, you're just gonna find the end zone. And because like, everything I've heard so far in this opening is, like, I ran into this person, they gave me a chance. I reinvented myself. I then reinvented myself again. I then had all the roles to get to the top, and now I'm coaching everyone to think like that, and then I'm reinventing myself always by
Yeah,
learning more, and now I'm in a new persona, mom,
mhm,
right?
yeah,
4
yeah,
and
do
1,
what
and
you
I'm reinventing myself again,
totally.
and I'm teaching people that reinventing themselves is all good, and
Yeah,
being able to speak to that, and that's what I hear when I hear from you. Like,
yeah,
I
I think
think
that's absolutely right, and I guess part of the coaching conversation, it does really come down to, like, having advocates help you reinvent yourself and think of ways to do that you haven't thought of. I think that's huge. So I
but you
totally.
also need the people around you,
Yes.
right, to appreciate that you're reinventing yourself, not above you, but even below you. I've learned, like, as you go through these evolutions, right,
Yeah. No, that's right.
You have people that love you below you in an organization, and they feel good about what you did. They support that evolution
And
of
they
your
trust and they
persona.
trust you, right? Like, I think a lot of the great work I was able to do for all the years I was at the trade desk was because I built real trust with, like, my team from the beginning, and I think even as, I would ascend, I would always come back to the core principles of, like, going back and being like, "Is this working for account managers? Like, is this, whatever we're rolling out or whatever we're talking about, like, how is this feeling in market?" Like, of course, I talk to more senior folks, but, like, when you're an AM talking to a trader at Omnicom, like, how is this feeling? And I think when you're able to build that kind of trust, and because I played all those roles, I know how it is to, like, get the brief and have to figure out how to make that work. I think always looking for feedback from every level, top and bottom, was also a huge way for me, and I'm trying really hard. I've only been at Index a year, but I'm trying really hard to also build that trusted Index as kind of the new person, which is a fun new role for me, the new person, and trying to understand with the team, like, here, like, what is it, that's working, what's not working, and, like, I wanna know, like, so we can find the end zone. I wanna know, like, what are the things that, like, crush, and what are the things where, like, we could do better, and building that trust with the team here has been really fun as well.
So shifting gears from you personally, your
Yeah.
persona being a legendary C-level mom, the what's Index Exchange up to that you're excited about?
Yeah.
What do you think is happening? I mean, I see Index Exchange just doing things everywhere.
We're
So
trying.
what's going on? What's
Yeah.
some inside baseball over there?
I think one of the reasons I was so excited to join and continue to be excited to be at Index Exchange is sell-side decisioning is huge, right? So I think of the legacy model, basically the DSP owns all of the decisioning, all of the power, and I think we probably as an industry over-index on the DSP has everything and the sell side's just aggregating publisher supply. What I think the real model probably should have been from the beginning is more so audiences are probably better off on the sell side because think of it this way, we have everything in the world to look at, and then we can narrow and then send to the DSP, and then we can look at frequency and we can look at, pacing and budget constraints. But we've really already determined our audience and made sure it's the right audience and qualified it before it ever went over to the other side. And so when I was looking for kind of my next role, connecting with Andrew Casale and hearing his vision of sell-side decisioning, I was like, "Oh my," it was just like something in my brain was just like, "Oh my god, of course we should have done it this way. That is so smart." And so coming to Index and seeing all of the growth of sell-side decisioning, all the growth of marketplaces, places like Sightly, and all of the really cool data targeting that's being done and giving more money back to working media, right? The DSPs have a really nice deal of kind of upcharging on a lot of different ways on data where a place like Index, we don't have to do that. And so in that way, we're able to give more to working media and see a much larger scale on audiences, but still using any kind of DSP or what the client prefers, whether it's a lightweight DSP, whether it's a full service DSP, using whatever DSP to really make sure that the transaction, goes all the way through, but that we're having that audience quality that we didn't have before.
I love that. I mean, you have so much passion for all this. I think it's awesome. You know,
I
you have
mean, I think it's cool. Like, I think ad tech is fun to me because there's something new always happening and new ideas coming to the front. I think it's, almost like, I'll talk to people in law or finance, like, I have friends in finance who are like, their job hasn't changed in 15 years, and it's m mind-boggling to me because I'm like, I'm literally talking about something new. It feels like I mean, now with, like, MCPs, and we won't even get into agentic, but, like, I feel like every, 12 months, I'm talking about something completely different that I didn't even see coming the 12 months prior, and that makes it really fun.
yeah, and for me also, I think what's cool about your role is just how many partners you work with.
Mhm.
So you're always thinking about like how to collaborate. I think
Yes.
that collaboration and bringing a beautiful thing together is always fun as
Yeah,
well to
I
reinvent
love
yourself.
that part. Yeah, I love that's, like, my favorite. Because it all interconnects, and sometimes we don't always appreciate, I think, how much it all interconnects, and so being at the middle of kind of the marketplaces and the data and, publishers and, agencies and brands, like, bringing now, like, at Index, we're really getting into measurement, which is, like, I love that because, like, I spent a lot of time on measurement in my previous role as well, and so bringing all of that together is so fun because it's like I get to pull from all these different parts of all of my knowledge, and I think at Index, we get to bring that together and really help figure out for our clients where everyone wins, right? We want an outcome where everyone feels like they won, that we see the brand growing in the way they want, that we see the data vendor being used in the way they want to be used, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's been really fun and I guess a different use of my knowledge than in my previous roles where I was really focusing on just agency and brand outcomes.
So cool. What what would you say, is next for you, right? Index and yourself
Yeah.
kinda move
Um,
it's hard. You get to a certain level, right?
yeah. You know,
What's
it's funny. I feel like what's next for me right now is 2 things. I'll just be honest, as you mentioned, I'm always learning. The app ecosystem is something that is one of the rare places that, like, I haven't spent I mean, I'm a little bit dangerous on it, but I haven't spent real time on app, and so I'm actually spending time right now getting really strategic on what does Index and app look like for 2027. I'm very excited about that. And then Index Cloud is another piece of the business that is incredibly technical. So it's really pushing my technical chops in a smart, good way. I'm like, whenever I talk about Kubernetes, I'm like, don't I sound so smart? My husband's software engineering. Like, you do not sound smart. But I think I sound smart. And learning about cloud and infrastructure and data costs and what that all means and what that looks like for the future of the industry. So I would say that's like from an index perspective. From a reinvention of myself, I don't know. I mean, I feel like I've just been so heads down the last year in this new role in a new company. I haven't really come up from air yet. I'm hoping, my 4-year-old likes pre-K. That's kind of where my mom brain's at. But yeah, I'm excited to continue kind of the index journey and figure out what the next year looks like for index.
I love that. I always like to ask this question. If you could go to dinner with one person, not in your family, it has to be alive, who would it be?
Has to be alive. Whew. I think this is gonna be a weird answer, but this is the first thing came to my brain. Barack Obama, because I think it would be incredibly from everything everyone's told me who's worked with him, and I've met some folks who are kind of on his staff and in different places. From what I've been told, he was incredibly smart and incredibly hardworking, but also incredibly like, he challenged his staff and his team to come up with the best solution and think about how to execute things brilliantly. So he's like a rare government leader who's like truly actually thinking about strategy and execution. And I think it would be so interesting to hear kind of, like the inside baseball on all the decisions he made and like how hard that must have been and how do you find leadership? Like how do you live leadership in like the most senior role in the world? I think that would be really interesting.
And if it wasn't a politician,
If it wasn't a politician,
I've gotten a bunch of Barack Obamas along the way.
wait, really?
Yeah,
I thought I was being super unique on that one. Now I'm really embarrassed. Oh my
really? That's one?
um, oh gosh, probably someone like Martha Stewart or some like, I think she would be super so she went to my college. I watched a documentary on her a couple of years ago and, like, talk about reinvention. That, like, I feel like her entire she's basically the OG influencer, and the way she kind of basically took being a suburban not housewife, but a suburban person and turned that into an empire, then went to, like, jail for fraud and then came back and was like, "I'm gonna be even better than before." Like, very few people can pull that off, and I think she really, seemed to make that work for her, so she would probably be someone that's really interesting to talk to.
Well, based on that, like, what are you have 2 kids, it's been crazy, right?
Mhm.
Are you, like, into, like, interesting documentaries based on Martha Stewart? Is that, like
I just caught one. I don't know if there's many. There's one on Netflix that I watched that I just thought was incredibly interesting because I honestly was not a big, like, Martha Stewart fan. Like, I wouldn't say I'm someone who, like, was into any of that, but I caught it and I was like, "Oh my god, she was, like, influencing before any of us ever even knew what that was." And now I feel like I can't walk 4 steps without someone, like, in casual Claude language telling me I really need this brand of coffee. It feels like it's infiltrated every step of our lives.
Alright, well, so she was the start of the annoyance, so you really wanna You want to interview the
Dig
start of
deeper.
the
I want to dig deeper on that with cool Martha. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. I respect that. Well,
Yeah.
listen, it was a lot of fun having you here today.
Yeah.
I've
Thank you
learned
so
a lot about leadership, index, decisioning, coaching, teaching people, coaching yourself, being in different walks of life, and I hope you had a lot of fun hanging
I
out with us.
did. Yeah. Thank you for having me. It was so great to catch up.
Thank you, Mary Beth.
All right.
Hey, I'm Chris, one of the producers for Sightly's Breaking Through the Mayhem podcast. We want to thank you so much for subscribing to the show. If you'd like to learn more about the guests we had on today, we included additional information about them in the show notes. Finally, if you'd like to be on the podcast, or if you know someone who'd make a great fit, you can fill out the form at sightly.com/podcast. Catch you on the next episode.